Lindsay. How are you? Welcome to Marketing Happy Hour.
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
We are so excited to have you. And we were just talking off record. We have been burning some of your candles at home and are absolutely obsessed and so excited to just kind of talk about the story behind that brand and everything that you've built so far. But first, we have to ask you, what's in your glass this afternoon?
So this is not what I'm currently drinking. I'm currently just drinking a basic girl Stanley filled with ice water, but
Love
but I'm
it.
thinking toward my happy hour this evening, and I love a Friday night slightly dirty martini,
Ooh,
shaken
Mhm.
so cold that there's like little ice chips on the top. A goat cheese stuffed olive would be
mm,
my ideal, but if that's not available, I would settle for a regular olive and just slightly dirty.
love it.
Yum. I absolutely love a dirty martini, so I'm there with you.
Preferably at a hotel bar.
Oh
Yes.
yeah, 100%. I'm currently just drinking a Brew Doctor kombucha. This one is peach punch and it's peach, prickly pear, and green tea. It's so good. This is my favorite brand of kombucha that's out there. And I keep mentioning it and I'm like, hopefully someone from the brand is gonna hear this, just giving them a shout out. But Cassie, what do you have?
I have a Stanley as well. I'm with Lindsay here, filled with water. Very simple. But I don't know. I'm thinking, happy hours in a little bit as well. And I'm always a Aperol spritz girly, but we'll see. We'll see what I'm feeling. But Lindsay, I have to ask you really quickly, what's your favorite hotel in New York to get a dirty martini at?
Oh my gosh, I have so many. I love the Bowery Hotel. I
Mm-hmm.
love the
Mhm.
Carlisle. Probably Bemelman's at the Carlisle is like
Mm,
Yes.
my favorite, most iconic, just a quintessential New York
Hmm.
hotel to get a drink.
so good.
Love it. I love it there. And they have the best martini service. They give you little snacks. And I always love that.
Yes. I'm like, obviously my so much of my brand is hotel and hotel lobby inspired. So you can imagine I spend a lot of time in hotel lobbies and at hotel bars,
Love
getting
that.
inspiration, R&D, all that good stuff.
That's amazing.
That's incredible. You need to make a guide to all of the good drinks that are at hotel bars.
We have it. We have it.
Oh, well, there you go. We'll have to check that out right after this recording. We are actually headed to New York shortly, and we'll be referencing your guide there.
I love it.
Awesome. Yes. Okay. Well, like Cassie mentioned, we are so excited to chat with you today about all things Hotel Lobby Candle. But first, could you share a little peek into your career journey thus far and how the idea for a home fragrance line inspired by five-star hotels around the world came to be?
Yeah, so I have, I don't know that there is ever a traditional entrepreneur path, but I worked in corporate for 10 plus years before taking the leap to go off on my own. I grew up always dreaming of being a magazine editor, and I was kind of a rare case in that like I knew from, the age of 7 years old probably or 8 years old that I wanted to work in publishing and pretty much spent all of my high school and all of college pursuing that goal. So had internships in college. I interned at Vogue one summer, and essentially did everything that I had to do in order to like fulfill my dream of working at a big magazine in New York after I graduated college. So I did that. I went to school in Syracuse, majored in magazine journalism, moved to New York City right after graduating, immediately started working. My first job was at GQ magazine. Then I was a business reporter at Inc magazine for a couple years and freelanced for a bunch of places in between there. But most recently, I had spent the majority of time at Town and Country magazine as a deputy digital editor, covering everything from luxury travel to beauty to some fashion and style. And I did that up until 2018. So throughout a lot of my career, my focus was luxury travel and beauty. And I got to, go to all of these incredible hotels all over the world. And my job was pretty much to tell our readers what the new hot place was going to be and where to stay and what to do, and you were going to different cities, and it was extremely challenging to have to do that for my job. 5-star hotels. It was amazing. It was certainly something that I never even like thought was possible, but I kind of just fell into it. I loved travel and was always traveling just on my own, and started taking on that role in the editorial space, and became kind of known as someone who is a luxury travel expert. And I found throughout that time, one of my favorite things about luxury hotels was that a lot of them have these beautiful signature scents. And it's definitely a branding thing for the hotels. They want you to walk in and sort of be enveloped in this like beautiful, just like intoxicating fragrance. And they want you to remember that every time you leave and come back, or if it's been years and then you come back and just have that same experience. And so I love the way it made me feel. And I love the way it gave me such a sense of place. And there were times where, I would be at one hotel, and then years later I would go to like a different, that same hotel brand, but in a different city, and I would smell that same fragrance, and it would just like bring me right back. And I always thought like, I wish my apartment could smell like these fancy hotels. Like, I want my home to have a signature scent. I want it to be inspired by that, like, feeling that I get at a luxury hotel. And often there wasn't a brand, there wasn't anywhere to buy a lot of the type of fragrances that hotels were branding. So I basically did nothing about it other than have this idea in my head. And after I left my job in 2018, I had grown a big Instagram following at the time, and decided to pursue content creation as a full-time career. And COVID happened. And so I finally had the opportunity, after thinking about it for a while, to pursue this idea of creating a candle brand and a home fragrance brand inspired by 5-star scents, 5-star fragrances, as we say. So I knew nothing about starting a business. I knew my taste level. I knew that I had, collected and burned luxury high-end candles for my entire life. And I knew what I liked and what I didn't like. And I had a very clear vision for the brand, but I really knew nothing about starting a business. And I never considered myself entrepreneurial at all. I always felt like I was the type of person who really had to be in like a structured corporate environment, and that was where I would thrive. And, I've kind of learned that that's not true. I think, you can totally be entrepreneurial without fitting the mold, let's say, of what you think an entrepreneur is. So 2020 happens, start thinking about the brand. I start doing tons and tons of research into manufacturing, and how to find a manufacturer, into the type of waxes people use, into perfumers and fragrance houses, and packaging, and all of these things. And totally bootstrapped the entire project, invested my own money into our first round of 2 cents, which is what we launched with in October. And yeah, it's sort of just been like a roller coaster from there. There's many more details that I could go into, but that was sort of the top line story of how it all happened.
Oh my gosh, that's such a good story, and I love that you point out, you didn't really know what you were doing, you just, like, did the research and did the work to get it done, because I feel like that's a story that a lot of people can relate to, especially listeners of this podcast. I know that a lot of our listeners are aspiring to be, business owners or, entrepreneurs themselves one day, and I love that attest to that you don't have to fit into the typical mold. Your path can look different than anyone next to you. So I love that. You mentioned that the first 2 scents were released at the same time. What were those first 2 hotel lobby scents, and how did you market the initial launch of your line?
Yeah, so we launched with 2 candles. It was our signature scent, which is our signature candle, and a holiday candle. And, initially we launched in October. I thought, okay, a lot of people are going to be buying gifts for the holidays. This is a really good time to start a brand. People might be willing to spend a little bit more money and buy things as gifts. And also, because it was during COVID and people were stuck at home and really missing travel. And I know for myself, like I was just kind of clinging on to like any little piece of like zen and like special, just indulgent self-care luxury things that could make me feel just more normal and maybe more relaxed and make my day feel a little bit more special. And so it sort of was a good time for us to launch. We launched October of, like I said, 2020, and I genuinely had no strategy. My only strategy was that for about a week before our launch, I posted on my Instagram and said that, I have been working on this thing behind the scenes. So we launched with 2 cents. I truly, because it was during COVID and there were supply chain issues and basically like every possible issue you know, you could think of, we ran into with the boxes were delayed, our glass was possibly not going to be available. So I didn't want to like go too hard in promoting it because I truly wasn't even sure if we were ever going to launch the product or have product to launch by the day that I wanted to. And then it was about a week before where I was like, okay, the candles are being filled. It is actually happening, and I feel ready to talk about it. So, like I said, I did have already a built-in audience on Instagram, and that's pretty much where I started. I posted on Instagram and said, this is something that I've been secretly working on behind the scenes for like the past 8 months. And I want to talk to you about it. I want to tell you the whole behind the scenes of the process. I want to describe in detail to you every single scent and like where my thought process was. And kind of just like I took people through the entire process that I hadn't been sharing at all, and did that pretty much every day for 7 days leading up to the launch. I had people, I think, maybe sign up for a wait list or something. I don't really remember, but I had no idea how much inventory to buy. I had no idea if people would even understand what I meant by a hotel lobby scent. And I just knew in my gut that once people saw the products and smelled them for the first time, they would be obsessed with it. But people are buying blind. They're buying without having ever smelled the products before. So I had to just hope that people would believe in it. And I bought enough inventory that I thought would last me until, let's say, like December of that year. I thought, well, if I could just sell through all of this by the time that the holidays roll around, then that will have been a success. And I had no plan after that. I was like, if it works, then maybe I'll launch another scent. If it doesn't, then that will have been like a really interesting learning experience. And we ended up selling out in 24 minutes. It was about like 3,000 candles, which was truly exceeded my wildest expectations. Like I just had no idea that it was going to happen that quickly. So that happened on launch day. Our Shopify site was like, I mean, I built it myself, like in my living room. We were just totally overwhelmed with traffic and how we were going to get all the orders out. And, we just basically said, like, bear with us. I didn't even know how to put like an out of stock thing on our website. It was just really chaotic, but in the most amazing, exciting way. And yeah, that was sort of
Wow.
what happened.
Wow, that is incredible to hear just the behind the scenes look at the craziness of launch day. I'm curious to hear too, how has your marketing strategy kind of shifted or changed over the years? You mentioned kind of just starting out on your personal Instagram, sharing about the brand, sharing about a behind the scenes look at what it takes to start this candle company in the initial stages. What are you focused on now? Like, are there areas that you're focused on now that you weren't so focused on in the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, I think for sure when we started, I really didn't have a plan other than operating from a place of telling the story of the product and getting people to love it and getting people to talk about it and share. The other thing is that as an editor and an influencer who like is on the receiving end of PR packages and boxes and things, like I wanted all of our packaging for our customers to feel like they were opening a PR package. And I wanted the details to be like super thoughtful and Instagrammable, because I knew the power of social sharing and influencer marketing. And, I really believe that everyone is an influencer. And if we had, people posting of 100 followers or 300 followers, like that, there's there's importance to that almost as much as people with 1 million. So, that was a big part of it for me as well. But that's sort of a through line in our marketing strategy, but now we're definitely more focused on email and SMS and affiliate, and we're doing a little bit of ads, not too much, but for sure, like now we really lean into like our community and people who love the brand, just like fans of the brand, as well as other influencers too.
Lindsay, I have to ask you too about one of my favorite topics, which is storytelling. And I can already kind of envision how you would describe the story behind this brand, even just the whole idea of feeling like you're stepping into a hotel lobby and what that means to someone, the nostalgia, the connection that they have to different hotels around the world that they've traveled to. But in your opinion, how important is great storytelling in the success of your marketing strategy? And how do you feel other brands can develop that own story for themselves around their brand as well?
Yeah, so for us, it's crucial. It is like as a former writer and editor, like storytelling is in my DNA. And it is, I truly think, the reason why our brand has been successful. It is challenging for people to buy a candle that they've never smelled before. Even for myself, it's hard to understand or kind of get what something smells like when you've never smelled it. So for us, it's really about creating this entire universe around what the candle is inspired by and giving people a sense of place. And we really tell the story from the very, very beginning. And we talk about, the moments that we drew inspiration from for the fragrance. And we really put the person in the place and paint the picture of what they're smelling at the time. So I remember when we launched our holiday candle, we were sharing a lot of imagery and videos of, like snow falling out the window and a crackling fireplace. And I would say, like, okay, imagine yourself, you're in a mountain lodge and you're cozying up on a leather couch and you just like took off your snow boots and there's snow falling outside the window and there's a fireplace crackling and you can smell the smoke and you just ordered yourself a cocktail, a hot toddy or something. Like think about that smell and what that moment smells and feels like. That is the smell and the feeling that you get from this candle. And we really tell that exact type of story with every one of our launches. We have playlists that correspond with the candle in the sense to like get people into the mood. We have really strong visuals. We do a lot of like lifestyle imagery that doesn't necessarily even incorporate the candle, but it just like sets the scene. And I think for a lot of people that helps them understand what this candle will smell and feel like.
Oh, such a good idea too. To use those different sensory elements to kind of paint that picture too, because I feel like to your point, if people aren't necessarily literally smelling the candle, they feel like they are just because of those descriptors and the rich language that you're using. So such a good strategy for that as well. And I also want that holiday candle. That sounds so nice.
Yeah.
Um, but I have to also ask you too, especially, being having a past in press and media, how do you feel like storytelling plays into garnering press coverage? And outside of storytelling, is there anything else that you'd say is important for garnering that press?
Yeah, honestly, I think relationships are the most important thing. I always found, when I was on the other side, I valued relationships with like publicists and, people in-house at brands and agencies so much because when you're in editorial, you're getting literally hundreds of pitches from brands a week. And often things are so cut and paste and cookie cutter. And you can tell it's just like not personalized for you. And there's just, the people aren't necessarily thinking about you as an editor and like what your specialty is and getting to know like the type of story that you would write. And so I think it's important, number one, to build like a personal relationship with, writers and get to know like what they don't like. I always say I would rather we send out 10 very individualized, thoughtful outreach to media than like a blast to 100 people. That's just like a generic press release. And so that's the one thing. And then the other thing is there has to sort of be a hook. And that was always something I looked for when I was a writer. You need a story. Like there has to be like a story. There has to be something interesting about it. I would always think about like, what's the headline? before, especially when I moved into digital. I started my career in print and then moved into digital, and I would, unless I could really think about what the headline was before I would write the article, like, it wasn't probably a story that I would be interested in doing, because in the same way, like an email subject line needs to get someone's attention, there really needs to be a headline that gets someone's attention and something that's compelling. So I would think about, like, if you're a brand and you're trying to get media attention, what is like the headline that you envision the writer writing for something about you?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And we always talk about that when we're talking to any PR professional, any of the work that you can do, as much work as you can do up front to kind of have those headlines or have those like thoughtful stories behind what you're pitching is always going to be super helpful in addition to relationships. So I love that you touched on that. But there's also a component to your brand. You have built a community of candle super fans that support you. And I would just love to hear how you keep those brand fans engaged on social and other marketing platforms as you're thinking about coming out with new products or promoting your existing products.
So I think for us, so much of keeping the community excited and engaged is by involving them. I'm constantly impressed and appreciate the very like direct and detailed feedback we get from people about what they're wanting, what they're not liking, I'll ask people, what city should we launch next? So a lot of our candles are inspired by specific cities and destinations, and we will do a focus group, or we'll post like questions on Instagram and say, what city should we launch next, and what color do you see that candle glass to be, and what notes would you want to see in that. We actually, one of our holiday candles, which is called Chalet, it's this very like spicy, fiery, like I call it like a sexy cinnamon holiday candle. And that was entirely driven by feedback that we had gotten from our community. So I was a little bit stumped about, for like our second or third holiday season, what the holiday scent would be. And I really wanted to understand what people wanted. So we started talking to the community, and it was like overwhelming the number of people that said they wanted a cinnamon type of candle, which I just personally would not, I had no idea. I didn't know that people would want that. And then, I said, well, what type of color of the glass would you want for holiday? And everyone was saying like they wanted like a deep red. So that's literally what we did. We created this candle that was completely inspired by what the community told us that they wanted. And, we just always keeping an open line of communication and being open to feedback, and just involving them in the process, and also reposting everyone on Instagram and thanking them for sharing, and just kind of having people know that they like have a direct line to us, and we're totally open to ideas and thoughts.
That's such a good note too, because we always tell people as well, you can't assume that you know what your consumer wants if you're not having those direct conversations with them. So literally allowing them to buy into the process and be a part of that, I'm sure is very rewarding for your community because they feel like they had a part to play in that development process. So that is absolutely wonderful.
I think it's a little bit of, you have to strike the balance between both. So, I think as a brand, you can't like entirely be driven by what your community wants.
Mhm.
Sometimes you need to tell them, maybe sometimes they don't know what they want, and you need to be the one to dictate, like, and you need to be the one to set the trend. And then other times I think getting the feedback is amazing. Like I'll give you an example. So that one candle was an example of something where we really were driven by them, but we also just launched a candle that's called Hamptons, and it's inspired by a weekend in the Hamptons. And the scent is, we're calling it very farm stand and garden inspired. And the top notes are green tomato vine and basil and mint. And if I would have asked people what type of summer scent they wanted, I would I would have been shocked if a single person said tomato, but I started to really be into these like tomato and savory and kind of like garden driven scents. And I
Mm.
felt like if people gave it a chance, they would be into that too.
Yeah.
So sort of took a risk, and I wasn't sure if it would really hit, but the feedback we've been getting is like insane from this scent. And I think if I had asked people beforehand if they wanted that, I don't know that they would have said they would, but with like the whole marketing and the visuals and the story that we created behind it, and the fact that the scent itself is incredible, I think we sort of gave people something they didn't know they wanted, but now they love. So
Oh, that's so fun. That sounds great. Well, I want to hear too, as an influencer yourself, but also just being on the brand side and working directly with your affiliate programs and just influencers yourself, where do you see the future of influencer marketing heading? Any trends you anticipate or things you're even just seeing now that you feel like are going to continue to build over the next year or so?
yeah, I think that the future of influencer marketing is infinite. I would say it's interesting because I obviously come from a traditional media background, and back in the day it was sort of like people learned about what to buy and where to go and like what to eat and all these things from magazines, and now that really has so shifted, in my opinion, to influencers. I think about my own life and things that I've bought or brands that I'm intrigued by, and it's like entirely driven by what I'm seeing on social media. So the first part is that like influencer marketing is bigger now than it's ever been, and I am so confident that it's only going to continue to get bigger and more important for brands. And I would say that affiliate marketing is going to become more important, for a lot of brands. I think building relationships with smaller, more targeted creators is important, and that's something a lot of people know and are talking about already. But we've certainly had success with creators who have smaller accounts, like 20,000, 25,000, more like micro level, versus we've had people with 3, 4, 5 million, 10 million people post about, or sorry, 10 million followers post about the candle, and like can't move the needle nearly as well as someone with a smaller following. So we really pay a lot of attention to smaller creators and know that like having them be invested in us and be ambassadors of the brand and being part of our affiliate program and all of that, that's really important to us. And I think that's going to become more important to a lot of brands in the future.
Completely agree. Well, we love to ask this question on the show too. What do you know now that you wish you knew earlier on in your career? I know you touched a little bit on like in the beginning of creating this brand, you didn't really know what to do, but is there anything throughout your entire career that you are looking back on that you would like wish you knew back then?
I have a few things I would say, from back in when I worked in media and editorial, like I definitely learned that you have to roll your sleeves up and be willing to do and learn everything and like be a sponge and ask a million questions. And it's not that I didn't know that then, but I do think that making connections, meeting people, following up, and just soaking in information from every single person around you is crucial. And you just never know when any of those people like may become uh, like important to you later on in your life. And now as a founder, I would say that like Google is your best friend. And if you I remember thinking when I started, oh, there must be some like secret playbook or something. Like how do all these people know how to start companies? Like I just felt so in the dark about how to start a brand. And I was like, oh, all these people, there must be some secret way that everyone knows. And what I learned is that there's not. And a lot of people just figure out by doing. And I'm not kidding when I say knew I wanted to start a candle brand. I did not know the first place to start, so I started Googling how to find a manufacturer. Where does one find a manufacturer? And then I just started emailing people that came up, and I learned from that a lot of them will only talk to you if you have a lot of money and you want to produce a lot of units. And so those people were out. And then I learned, okay, well, you need to find manufacturers that are open to working with smaller budgets and smaller quantities. And just so much of what I learned was just through researching and Googling and reaching out to people and asking a lot of questions. So that is, there is no like secret playbook. You truly just have to learn by doing. I would say that learning from every mistake is huge. Like there have definitely been times where we tried things that like did not work, and I never really like get too upset about it because I just think of it as like okay, well, that's something we know now that we didn't know before. I really try to think of every like miss or like missed opportunity just like as a learning experience and add it to like my bank of knowledge for the future. And then the other thing too, and I was actually just listening to another episode of your podcast where the guests were just talking about like really honing in on what they like to do and what they're good at, and then finding other people or contracting out other people to do the rest. So I would say like when you're first starting out, obviously like unless you have funding from a lot of people, if you're just bootstrapping, you're of course going to do everything yourself. But as you grow, I think you need to get very honest with yourself about like what fills your cup, what you're good at, and like what things like fill you with dread. And there are definitely things that fill me with dread. And I try to find other people to whose expertise, those things are, and who people who enjoy doing the things that I don't. I think you need to like know your magic and know what makes you really good at what you do, and try not to get bogged down with the things that you're not good at, because you can find someone else who's really good at those things and be more efficient with your time.
Oh, such good advice. Thank you for that encouragement and that reminder. That was so good. And we've just loved learning about your story and the brand and your past and how you've developed everything that you've built so far. And we can't wait to stay in touch with you, Lindsay. So if you don't mind, share with us a little bit about how we can connect with you personally, but also with Hotel Lobby Candle as well.
Sure. So my Instagram handle is at Lindsay Silb. You can find our brand, Hotel Lobby Candle, at hotellobbycandle.com. We also have our Instagram account at Hotel Lobby Candle, and we're sold on our website as well as neimanmarcus.com and in most Neiman Marcus stores.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again. We really appreciate it and can't wait to just stay in touch and stay tuned with the brand and new scents that you release. And just congrats on all the success that you've found so far.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Marketing Happy Hour podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. If you want more of Marketing Happy Hour but don't know where to start, we invite you to download our free Marketing Happy Hour starter kit at marketinghappyhr.com/starter-kit. This interactive magazine-style PDF walks through who we are, includes helpful resources like a marketing term glossary and the printable daily planner sheet that we actually use ourselves, and contains clickable links to our episode recommendations by subject area. Not to mention all the fun extras like a quiz, the link to our Marketing Happy Hour Insiders Facebook group, a word search, a playlist, a goal-setting guide, content inspo by month, and more. It's our hope that you'll dive into this resource and walk away more confident in your career journey with a group of industry pals that you can lean on for advice and support. Snag your free starter kit today at marketinghappyhr.com/starter-kit for all of the info you need to become a Marketing Happy Hour insider.